Brad Gingrich. I'm president of EssAnalytics and been working in the Hyperion space probably, I think my first Essbase exposure was in 1999. And so we'll kind of leave it at that, but I'm excited to be here and share a solution that used a product that's probably just about as old in this environment as I am, but is really a lot more powerful than I have ever imagined. And really in the last 2 to 3 years, we've been able to see with several of our clients the types of solutions you can build with this product. With that, I'll let Chris Newman go ahead and introduce himself. He's the one who really made this happen. You can't have a project successful without a strong driver on the client side. Chris, go ahead.
Thanks, Brad. Yeah, my name is Chris Newman. I work for Vertiv Corporation based in Columbus, Ohio. I am a finance manager who supports human resources globally. And our third is Dennis.
Hi, everybody. Dennis Hogan, also with EssAnalytics. Been doing work with Hyperion products like Brad since the 90s, late 90s. Most of that of the last decade or so has been Essbase planning and Dodeca work.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. What I'd like to do, I'll go ahead and we won't bore you with a long PowerPoint presentation, but we do want to set this up a little bit with kind of the background of the project, how we got there. And then we will go into a demo in our development environment. We protected the innocent and kind of walk through some of the solutions so you can get an idea of the types of things that you can do with Dodeca and Essbase together. And then we will wrap up with, we're going to attempt to leave plenty of time for some questions and answers at the end. So with that, let me go ahead and see if I can get this going correctly. We use Teams internally, so sometimes Zoom acts up for me, but can everyone see the PowerPoint?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, just to give you a little more background on EssAnalytics. We were founded in 2004. We spent a brief time merging in with a company that was focused on content management, specifically Documentum solutions. And then towards the end of that, they were going a slightly different direction, more in digital marketing, and we wanted to return to our roots in enterprise performance management, and reestablished in 2013. Primarily a regional focus in the Midwest and Southeast. Provide solution advisory services, implementation services, production support, among other things. Mentioned we have a delivery focus. Many of our customers, we've expanded outside of the Midwest and Southeast, depending upon where customers who are headquartered in that area end up taking us. We will expand out where it makes sense. And many of our customers have retained us for over 10 plus years. That doesn't mean we're doing projects straight for 10 years, but they'll bring us back in as needed, and as they go through the maturity curve of EPM, they have different needs. And 100% of our clients are still referenceable. Solution focus, I won't go into this, but basically right across the EPM suite, consolidations, close, planning solutions, and various financial analytics solutions. One thing I do want to spend a little bit of time on is probably several of you have heard of Dodeca. It's been around for 21 plus years. I think they had their 21st birthday last year at an event I was at. And I've always heard of Dodeca in the last few years. I think, you know, when I think 10, 15 years ago, I knew it was another reporting tool against Essbase. About 3 years ago, one of our main clients was looking at Dodeca and reached out to me and said, you know, this is something you really, really need to take a look at. And so we spent some time with them. And there's also a couple other regional clients that have used Dodeca and end up deploying it beyond what their initial expectations are. So with that, when we were talking with Vertiv about moving their Excel-based process out of Excel and into a solution, and at the time, given the timing of it, we weren't going to evaluate new technologies per se. They owned Essbase. So we were planning on utilizing Essbase. We knew we needed to have some controls on the upfront, just like planning type forms. And we knew we could do that the old school way with Essbase and VBA, but that's a nightmare to maintain. And there's a lot of reasons you don't want to go down that route, as probably several of you know. We turned to Dodeca, and we probably put together one of the most complex solutions and productive from a value perspective in workforce area that I've been a part of when I think of this. So just wanted to give kudos from that perspective. It is a pretty powerful tool because you can hit multiple sources, you can control things, and we can talk about some of that during Q&A. With that, I'll go ahead and let Chris get into the business side of a little more detail around why we were headed down this path.
Thanks, Brad. So just to set the stage, I just want to give a little overview of who Vertiv is. If you haven't heard of our company, what we do is we bring together hardware, software, analytics, and ongoing services to enable continuous and optimal running of vital applications for data centers, communication networks, and commercial and industrial facilities. And what that essentially means is we build a lot of stuff that supports the functionality and day-to-day operations of data centers and communication networks. So that's anything from the racks that the servers sit on to power management and software that can keep the data centers and other facilities operating 24/7. A couple quick facts about our company. Last year, our revenue hit $4.4 billion. Some of our major customers include Alibaba, AT&T, China Mobile, Siemens, and Verizon. We actually went public this year, so we're trading on the New York Stock Exchange, trading as VRT. As I mentioned earlier, we are headquartered in Columbus, Ohio, but we do operate or have employees rather in 45 plus countries around the globe. And we have about 20,000 employees working for our company. And that last bullet was really kind of the genesis for why we were looking for a solution or a better solution than what we had. It was, how do we manage forecasting and understanding our employee base at such a large number, and it's spanning across so many different countries with so many different payroll assumptions. So if we can go to the next slide. And this problem really is a combination of a finance and a human resources problem to manage. And that's kind of why I got brought into trying to lead a project to look for a solution. And kind of looking to where Vertiv wanted their finance and human resources support to go. We came up with a few goals in terms of what we wanted to do as a company. So just going through them quickly, we wanted to be able to scrutinize our expenses. So we wanted to be able to better understand our expenses in terms of payroll and provide accountability to our business partners. I think a goal for all companies is always to expedite the forecasting turnaround. So is there a way we can pull this information together much quicker every month? We wanted to invest in talent and have great tools that our talent could utilize. So can we invest in fewer people but let them do more with the tools that support them? Also, we wanted to have our support employees focus on analysis, not just reporting numbers. So we had issues where we were spending most of our time just trying to get the numbers, and we weren't having enough time to focus on commentary or recommendations that would drive decision making. And then finally, we wanted to ensure our systems and our assumptions were accurate. So does the data that's producing our forecast around the world, is that reflecting reality, and is that reliable, and shouldn't be questioned? You can go to the next slide. And why we really decided to try to pursue a company-wide approach instead of maintaining our process of having more localized forecasts and rolling that up really contributed to a couple of things. One was consistency. We were finding a lot of areas within our company were not calculating their forecasts in a similar fashion, and that could lead to a lot of confusion from leadership as they were looking at their numbers. Speed was another one. Could we potentially build a forecast more centrally and have that forecast tweaked by folks that are more localized to the region? Also, data integrity. Would users more likely fix errors if they came across them? If they just found that in a spreadsheet, would they actually go back and fix the source data, or might they forget about it and ignore it? If we had a solution where we were pushing data from systems directly into their forecasts, they're more likely to fix or correct those errors. Another one was storytelling. So being able to easily pull multiple intersections of data and spend more time understanding what the numbers mean instead of having to focus on how am I going to get this data. And then finally, matrix support. So we have a lot of, in our company, we have a lot of global business units where we have folks based in the United States, but that might be responsible for areas in Europe or Asia, and they didn't really have great access or insight into the details of how that payroll was getting forecasted every month. So giving them a tool that could provide them the complete picture of their support organization was key. You can go to the next slide. And then kind of the evolution of the background story of how we approach building this tool. I will say, back in mid 2019, as Brad kind of mentioned, we were looking for a quick one-time solution of hey, we have been trying to pull our budget together in a bunch of spreadsheets across the globe, and it's just not been working. Is there a way we could kind of manage this through an Essbase cube? And through conversations and getting introduced to Dodeca, which really lets you put a user interface to your Essbase cube. By the end of 2019, when budget was all said and done, we actually had a functioning tool that we could actually load data into. We could put inputs or payroll assumptions by country into, and it would also spit out various reports. And while that tool wasn't really in the right place to be used on a regular basis, it did open our eyes to what could be possible if we put a little bit more effort into it. So the decision was made that we would pilot building an actual full-blown tool using Dodeca and Essbase to create a forecasting tool on a regular basis. So we took one of our 3 regions, our Europe region, and piloted building a solution that was a little bit more tailored to their needs and would allow them to feed data into the tool on a monthly basis and produce forecast and reporting for them. And after we had a successful pilot of that, the decision was made to build out a tool solution for the other 2 regions in our company and produce a 2021 budget for all 3 regions in the company, with the intent of in Q1 of 2021 utilizing that completed tool for all 3 regions for forecasting going forward. Next slide. And just to give a high level of how we kind of organized our data. Back in 2019, when we built the single budget solution, we had all the data sitting in one Essbase cube. And there was pluses and minuses to that, and through discussion we decided to split it up into 4 sections. So we had a cube for each of our 3 regions, and then a consolidation cube, which really just pulled the data out of the 3 regions and let more of our corporate support folks read the forecast data that they were producing. There's a couple reasons for this. One was localization. So we had lots of issues initially with all the data sitting in one cube of, hey, what time do we back up this data? There's, as you can imagine, different localization items that go into payroll being involved in so many different countries. Does it make sense to have FICA capabilities in an Asian payroll system? Probably not. So there's a lot of unique things where it made more sense to kind of regionalize the cubes. It also helped with security. So as you can imagine, having payroll data sitting in this database, there's a lot of worry about the sensitive nature of the information getting produced in this tool. So splitting it up by region really helped give a little bit more sense of comfort on even if something broke within the region, it wouldn't be as big of a deal for APAC to see more APAC data than them to accidentally get their hands on corporate payroll data. So that helped just give us a little bit more ease with how the structure of the cube was set up, and also processing efficiency. So it less records in the individual cubes just made the tool a little bit more fast, and it's doing a lot in terms of, we have a lot of employee records loaded into the tool. We have a good amount of dimensions, and we have a lot of calculations going into the tool. So it's doing a lot behind the scenes, and being able to split that up into 3 regions really helped cut down on the time it took to recalculate the entire cube. Go to the next slide. In terms of process and how this worked in practice, our goal was to have our forecasts complete and ready for review by day 1. So we were gathering our inputs the second to last business day of the month. We would load that into the tool. We have some drivers and inputs added in the first to last day of the month. And then really starting the month, we had a forecast, and it has a couple days of review from the HR team, where they review open positions and termination assumptions. And then it has a couple days of review from the finance team, where they're double checking and make sure the numbers make sense and they can explain forecast to forecast. And this has really optimized who's responsible for what. And it's cut anywhere between 2 to 3 days out of the forecast process just by having a tool that can do a lot of the calculation work for us. Go to the next slide. just to visualize how this is working from a high level, we can start in the gray boxes on the left. We just have systems that were already in use that store our open positions and our current employee information to where we can extract information and produce a load file. And that is created and loaded into a staging area, which is then pushed to each of the regional cubes. And in those cubes, that's where the users will update their assumptions. They will input any future positions. So if we have a project that's going to require 50 heads to be hired in Q3, we could put that type of assumption into the tool. And also if we have any terminations that are not currently in our system that we need to make from a forecast assumption, we can add that into the tool as well. And from the regional level, we can get regional reports that are created out of those cubes. And also the console cube will retrieve the data from the regional cubes and push that data into our HFM solution, which manages our consolidated forecast for the whole company. Next slide. So getting into kind of the user interface and why we like this solution so much, and especially dealing with across of finance users and human resource users across multiple different countries. It was really great from a training perspective and a usability perspective to layer in a user interface to this solution. So it was really easy to explain how Dodeca works in terms of there's really 4 areas in the tool. And you can see that if you go to the next slide, that's how it looks in actuality, where you have a couple panes where you can select reports on the left-hand side. So you can select inputs or reports. It opens up into the main spreadsheet area that looks familiar to everyone. So that was very easy to explain how that worked. You have filters on the dimensions up at the top to where you can run your reports, you can submit your data, and you can filter on any intersection imaginable within the Essbase cube. And then off to the right, you have your hierarchies. So your dimension hierarchies, and there's a built-in search bar to where if you just needed to do a search for a particular department code, you could do that and navigate very easily there. So this interface gave us a lot of visibility and speed to access our data that was a lot more cumbersome before, and not all the people in the areas that touch the forecasting process had access to. So that was a huge win for us with this solution. Just to give you an idea of some of the parameters we used within the tool, obviously you have your typical, your year, your version, your scenario. The yellow items were part of our cost stream segment. So you have your entity or your business unit, your location, your department, your product. And we also had a variety of different accounts. And we had accounts that lined up with our HFM financial system and accounts that were more generic to payroll. So your base salary versus your merit increase for the year, as an example. We also layered in access to the individual employee level, so you could filter on specific managers and see rosters of their team, or you could even go all the way down to a specific open position and see what the assumptions were for that position. And what was really nice is we have the ability to easily call up a fully loaded salary and compensation package for a position, which was something that we didn't have clear insight across the company before. And then finally, the currency just allowed us to flip between a localized currency or our standard reporting USD currency. And something that was really neat in terms of security was we kind of have two separate users within this tool. We have the kind of compensation viewing users who can see employee compensation for their specific support areas on a day-to-day basis. And then we had typically our finance users weren't privy to that information. And we had to create security groups that could isolate just the upper levels of the hierarchy in terms of maybe they could only see the department level and couldn't go down into the employee level to see that sensitive compensation data. So our ability to allow both views within the same tool was another key element in this solution, to where we can have both parties in the same tool viewing the same data, but they still had that separation where they couldn't see compensation data if they weren't allowed to as part of business procedures. Go to the next slide. And I promise I'm almost done with the slides, and we'll get into a live demo shortly. Just an idea real quick of the types of stuff we'll be looking at in the demo. Dodeca is really nice because not only does it allow us to have reports and input templates, but we can also store just help documents. So we're able to put some documentation together on how the tool operates and how the calculations work, and store that directly in the tool. So if anyone has questions or forgets how something works, they can bring that documentation right up in the tool. They don't have to go to a SharePoint site or a Teams channel to see that information. And in terms of the inputs, we just had a couple sections in terms of we have some higher level admin inputs that might be managing FX rates and maybe country level assumptions, such as this country gets 3% merit for the year. And then we have more specific drivers where you might be doing localized bonuses or state tax rates or anything that's a little bit more lower level. And we also have forecasting capabilities. So do we need new hires forecasted? Do we need terminations forecasted? Do we need employees transferring to different departments? Do we need to clear out assumptions that are no longer relevant? So we have all those capabilities within the tool, and we'll show some of those templates here shortly. And then finally, just the reports. The fact that we can run reports very easily out of this tool as well, where we do kind of your typical finance reports where you're showing our HFM account structure. We have roster reports where users can spit out rosters for leaders and show exactly what to the penny is behind their forecast in terms of new hires and terminations and current employee rosters. And then we have extraction templates, so the ability to load that data into other systems. A couple systems we load to Hyperion Planning and HFM. So we'll kind of hit through some of those templates here shortly, but just to give you an idea of what this tool can do. So kind of in conclusion, what this provides Vertiv, it provides forecasting for each region, and it since it's a regional level, it's tailored to their specific ERP costing. So here at Vertiv, we don't have one ERP system yet for the entire globe. So that was kind of key in building those region cubes out and tailoring that so that they can accept their localized cost strings. We've got the ability to see all three cubes in one cube. So that consolidation cube allows us from a corporate level to view everyone's forecast and to pull global rosters that align with our financials. We've got efficiencies in how fast we can turn around the forecast. We have historical record on what countries budgeted for and the assumptions that went through their budget and their forecast. We have standardized reports that both HR and finance can easily look at within the tool. We also have scenario analysis, which will let us copy a forecast or a budget over into another scenario, and we can manipulate that. So if we're building a budget with a certain merit percentages assumed, we can copy that same budget over and zero out the merit percentage and see the difference before and after in those assumptions and the impact they'll have on the business. And finally, this sets a foundation here at Vertiv to have systems do the heavy lifting for us, and sets the tone to where we can now start to enforce having our analysts actually analyze the data and not spend so much time compiling the data just to get it in on time. So I think that's our PowerPoint, and I think we can now dive into the solution. And Brad, Dennis, I'll kind of drive the demo, but if there's any technical backgrounds or things you want to highlight during the demo, feel free to chime in.
Okay, will do. Give me a moment to make sure I still have my connection, which it looks good. And here we go. Okay, let's go ahead. Let me just give you an idea of where we are. We connected earlier. I wanted to make sure with the Zoom meeting and everything that if we need to, we've got some of these reports brought up. But what we'll go ahead and do is we can rerun these as needed. But Chris, if you want to kind of walk through the sections and we kind of have them laid out here, I can either open them up or go ahead and rebuild them at this stage.
Okay. Yeah, so let's start with the documentation. You might need to arrow over a little bit since you have so many tabs open.
Yeah, that might be either that or I don't have the documentation still open. So I'll go ahead and open up the documentation one.
So it's very, very easy to open up something on this left-hand page. You just double click it. And depending on what the template is, you can either execute or run the template, or in this case, it's just a documentation template to where it just opens automatically. But this is an example of just storing help documentation. So for this example, this is just some of the calculation logic that the tool uses, and you can see we have a lot of different payroll calculations and options that the users can use, and this is just kind of serving as a reminder on what the tool is actually doing on the back end. So if someone's looking at a report and they don't remember how something's getting calculated, like is a percent based on someone's base salary, or is it based on their total cash compensation? We've got that documented for them, and they can easily pull that up within the tool while they're looking through the reporting. So we plan to make this a little bit more robust, but it is a very nice feature to have that stored directly into the tool. So you can collapse the documentation so that is kind of filtered out of our way on the hierarchy. The next section that we have created is this input and review. And this is really where the forecasting action occurs. So these are more input templates in terms of the users that are actually building the forecast out. So we have these in a couple different sections. We have some admin inputs, which are really inputs that might be touched once a year in terms of what the standard FX foreign exchange rate we're using, or the workday weighting that we're doing on a monthly basis. So being a global tool with different accounting practices, there was an issue where we had United States and Canada actually needed their forecast weighted by how many work days were in the month, while the rest of the world kind of just had it straight lined for forecasting purposes. So having the ability to go in here and adjust the weighting based on the work days that are in a given year was very helpful, and to see that and to have that impact our forecast. Next, it gets down to our kind of overall assumptions on how we're going to forecast the payroll. So we kind of start at the country level and work our way down. So what Brad's opening up here is just an assumption list of by country what the drivers should be for that country. And what this does when it's executed is it actually will submit that to every employee record within that intersection. So in the screen now, it would give Argentina a merit percent of 15% as of 9/1/2021, and every employee that was mapped to Argentina would get that rate after this executed. So this is kind of the first step in applying those drivers to where we say, hey, we have a set of assumptions by country, and we want to just apply that to every employee record within that country. The next template that we created was what we called a selective push. And this was a little bit more dynamic in terms of the intersections we were hitting. So let's say this was used a lot with like the bonus. So if you click one of the bonus, Brad, and let's just say we have a local bonus for if you can change the location to a specific country. So let's just say we want to hit Canada, for example. So we want to give our Canadian employees a specific rate for their bonuses. We can filter on that intersection. The template transforms to just that intersection, and we can proceed to enter amounts that will just hit the intersection of Canada for our employee base. And we can do this by department, and we can do this by business unit, which gives us a lot of flexibility because we have a lot of different programs depending on what area of the globe you're in. So this is kind of the next step after you do your country levels. You go in and do your more specific items that might be department dependent, they might be business unit dependent, to tweak it even further. And then finally, we have all the way down to the employee level. So that's that third template in the drivers. And this essentially lists a roster. You probably could stick with Canada for now, so it doesn't take too long, and switch it to budget. So this will give us a roster of everyone who's in Canada and what their assumptions are from a payroll perspective. So if you scroll to the right, you can see we have kind of the base level intersection, we have their salary, their merit percent, and the list goes on and on what their drivers might be that we've forecasted for them. So here, if we had like a data error, we could go in here and enter or fix someone's assumption and get that in the forecast. But the key is, and why the system's helping us become a little bit more disciplined, is if they fix something in this tool, they're gonna have to fix it again next month unless they go back to the source data system and fix it. So if someone's compensation was misentered for whatever reason in our HCM employee management system, and it gets caught here, there's a lot more incentive for the forecaster to go back and make sure HR is fixing that record, because they're going to have that same issue the next month when that reloads into the tool. So the next section and kind of the final section for forecasting was our new employee assumptions, our termination assumptions, and any reorganizations that needed to occur. So we'll just go into one of them since we're a little short on time, but we'll kind of show our concept on how we're creating new hire records. And what's nice about Dodeca as well is we have a lot of the spreadsheet capability to where we can have multiple tabs within a single template. We can have instructions built in like you see here. We can also have reference tabs, which the way this works essentially is you can copy an employee's information that's already in the cube and create a new hire based off that employee. So the concept would be, let's find an employee that has similar costing to what we want to create in terms of the business unit, the department, the country. And we can pick up all of their current drivers that are in the system. So if we're picking a specific department and that department has a bonus applied just for them, we would pick that up in the employee record. And we can copy that over here. And if you scroll over, Brad, that's going to fill out essentially all the drivers for them by pasting that in over there. And then you proceed, if you scroll just a little bit to the right, to do your, a little bit to the left. Yeah, right there. So you can pick your hire counter. So is this just going to be a 1 head count entry, or is this going to be a 50 head count entry? You can pick what payroll currency you want this record to be in. If you shift 1 cell to the left, you can pick the salary that you would want this record to represent, and you can also pick a start date for this record in a hire reason. So those are all really things that we internally report on and also forecast on that we had to build into this tool to make sure we were forecasting accurately. And then once we've kind of filled out all those columns, and again, most of those columns are being pasted over from the roster reference tab. So we would essentially copy the full columns to fill it in to start out, and then just tweak the start date and maybe the payroll assumption, or sorry, the base salary assumption. So it's very quick and easy to do that. And then we would submit that into the Essbase cube. And then finally, the last tab in this process was, hey, how do we put a job title to this and maybe put some leadership hierarchy in here? And I'll probably botch the technical aspect of this, but since job titles can be pretty much free form here at Vertiv at the moment, we needed to kind of store this data off into its own area outside of I believe the Essbase cube.
Yeah, so we have this is where we're combining some relational data with the Essbase data and doing some joins, and even you can do some pretty fancy things in the templates to bring that data back together. But yeah, due to the free form nature of some of these, what we'll call them employee properties, it made sense to keep that relationally as opposed to put that type of data into the Essbase cube.
Yeah, and this has actually been a really helpful feature to have that free form, because we can use it as a description as well. So going through the budget process, we have lots of new hire creations that we don't necessarily have stored in our recruiting system yet for the next year. So we might include a project name in the job title or something that might not be your typical job title. And because we can make it free form, it's really helpful from a reporting aspect to put reminders into the job title to help leaders understand what these positions represent. And especially, I can foresee us being in the middle of the year next year, and leaders might forget what got budgeted and being able to have that freeform text stored in our reporting is very helpful. So this gets saved in a separate database, but it gets pulled in some of our reporting so that we can merge it with what's stored in the Essbase cube. So that's essentially the inputs. We do have the ability to do something similar with terminations, so we can create a termination record just like the new hire record. We don't have to open it, but same concept. You can create a one-for-one termination. Maybe you're terminating a leader that you don't want to necessarily put a term date in a system yet for them. You can create something that will offset that in the tool, and also being able to transfer. So if we have, especially during the budget time, we have reorganizations that are going on that we want to make sure we have right for the budget, but they're not necessarily implemented yet for this year. So being able to transfer folks to different departments within the tools is very helpful as well. In terms of the reporting, because I want to make sure we have enough time for Q&A, we'll show a couple report examples. So this one that Brad's opening up right here is just a typical finance report where we're kind of walking through the different payroll accounts. And we have kind of two views. So we have how your compensation might be built, starting with your base salary and adding in your merits and maybe some bonus amounts and going in. If you scroll down to insurance assumptions and life and disability and then getting into your taxes, we have that kind of walk for us available, and we can filter this on any department, business unit, country, or even employee to see that information. The next one aligns with how our financial system shows the data, so it's more of an account setup to where it's doing wage account and tax account, but this is more what our finance folks would view the data as. So this helps them kind of get comfortable with the amounts that are getting loaded into HFM. And then we just have a check tab to make sure that they tie out for one, and it looks like with our test data we might have zeroed out some headcount accidentally.
Yeah, noticed some missing rates in the test data too. So we wanted to protect the innocent end of the dev environment. So we almost got it there.
And then I wanted to show a roster example real quick, so you can open one of the roster reports. And this is really helpful in terms of our human resources folks meeting with leaders and really being able to give them insight into the employees that are going into their budget or their forecast. So they can literally pull a roster that's going to show them all the records that are under a specific department or business unit, and they know that all these add up to the forecast, and they can see those amounts off to the side on the far right that equate to the forecast that would be submitted into our systems. So
they can select which of those accounts they want to pull into the report too.
Yeah,
so
that's another
really
great feature.
flexible.
So you can so we have some default accounts up at the top, but if you open up that dimension, that account dimension, if they want to see more accounts or different accounts, we give them access to make it a little bit more dynamic in terms of what they're pulling into this roster. So if they wanted to separate base salary from bonuses, they could check those two accounts and rerun this report, and it would drop it as a column. So that's also a neat feature that just gives a little bit more flexibility than what you would typically have in a normal canned report in some of our other systems. So I will end it there. I think I went about 5 minutes longer than I was supposed to, but it had a lot of content, and the tool does a lot of really neat things, and it's very user friendly. So it's been a great solution for us so far.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chris. Give me 1 second. And we'll end it here. I know we're a little over. All right. But thank you all. I guess one thing I'll leave you with, we are going to do a gift card giveaway. If everyone can go out and take a moment to go to SurveyMonkey, and then I've got this here, r/EssAnalytics. It's a 2-question thing, and then we'll be pulling those names and sending out a gift card to one of the participants. Our contact information's here as well. I don't know, I guess I will ask the host if we have enough time to take a few questions, or if we need to go ahead and end it here.
You can take as many questions as you like. We just like you to finish up right before the start of the hour, so Tracy can.
Okay, outstanding. Thank you very much. So we'll open the floor for any questions. Thank you all for attending. And I don't know, I guess people would ask them on chat or?
Yep, there's a Q&A feature at the bottom and a chat feature. They can enter them in.
Okay. Looks like everyone's ready for lunch. Well, if anyone, I'm sorry.
Hey, Brad.
Yes.
One thing that might, since there aren't any questions, one thing that might be worth talking a little bit about is the ability to also connect to HFM. So not only can we get the stuff into the HFM accounts in our system, we push it there, and you can actually run reports against HFM from Dodeca as well.
Yes, there is a new HFM Dodeca adapter that we are using to combine the HFM data with some of the Essbase data. So that is that's a pretty powerful addition from that perspective. And I guess the one thing I would leave, looking at time here, is my perception of what Dodeca could do from 10 years ago to the last 3 years is, and I'm sure the product's matured over that time frame, but I'm blown away with the things that you can say yes to with putting proper governance and support around the back end, that are more difficult to say yes to in other applications that I've worked with over the years. So I'm not saying it's a perfect fit for every planning situation, but there are definitely situations where it can do some things that are much more difficult in other traditional planning applications. And with that, I'll go ahead and stop and let everyone get to their lunch, I guess. Let me check the Q&A, see if there's no questions. So thank you all for attending. Once again, if there are any follow-up questions or contact information's here, it may be someplace else. I'm not sure if it's in the, well, this will all be recorded. Feel free to reach out to us. But thank you very much. I appreciate the time and the opportunity to present the solution.